and his partner Imhotep, who built the step pyramid of Saqqara. And around that step pyramid was an institution of the Great Lodge and an educational center, a spiritual center. This is one of the only images of the Pharaoh Zoser, with his full lips and his fleshy nose. If only Michael Jackson had this image as he was growing up and being prostituted on the altar of exploitation, we might have had a different Michael Jackson. But this is the beginning of the old kingdom, which unifies itself with Africans coming up from the south, a family of African warriors and priest kings unifying the Nile Valley in the first dynasties, 3100 BC. And among those first dynasty kings were the great family of the Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. We need to get our rap artists to put this into some tunes. Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, and what they did. So when our youngsters go into the school system, they'll already have had this in their homes. So when the teacher pulls out Dick, Jane, and Spot, they'll say, no. We want Khufu, Khafra, Menkaure. We want Harriet Tubman. We want Sojourner Truth. Leave that mess alone. You will have already taught them in their schools. But as we deal with this symbolism, when we deal with this concrete material symbol, you have to look for the deep principle behind it. That's what Dr. Wade Noble is talking about. What is the deep principle behind the Sphinx? The Sphinx is a spiritual center. The Sphinx is not just a structure. The Sphinx is a transformative principle. The animal level at the base, the human head, and then in that human head is the divine consciousness of God. There are 3 levels of transformation in the Sphinx. So when you see this, look for the deep African principles at the bottom of these institutions that your people left for eternity. But then when the old kingdom had reached its fulfillment and began to decline, and there was a period of disunion, up from the south again comes African priest king warriors. And they unified the Nile Valley again, unified Kemet once again. 2000 BC, 2050 BC, up from the south comes Mentuhotep, the great pharaoh who founded the Middle Kingdom. And this is Mentuhotep. Now, if they wanted to picture Mentuhotep as white, they had white paint, they could have done it. But instead, they got him the blackest of black. And it's not only a black color. Those of you up front, look at those feet. If those are not African feet, I don't know what is feet. Mentuhotep, founder of the Middle Kingdom, coming up from the south again. First time they came up to create the first dynasty. Second time, African priest kings come up from the south to create the Middle Kingdom. And then that kingdom was continued on with other great Africans. This brother here, Kepakare, Wenceroret the first in the 12th dynasty, looking like my brother. One of the great African pharaohs on the throne of Egypt. You're talking about 2000 BC, before the Greeks had a pot to pee in, or any Europeans had a shoe or a house. This is what the Africans looked like. But my favorite in that Middle Dynasty is someone called Amenemhotep III. Look at this brother, 12th Dynasty, Middle Kingdom. He was on the throne 1846 to 1797. Look at this dude. If you saw him on 14th Street, you most likely would run onto the other side of the road. This was a brother who was on the throne. These are the people that Albert Shanker says were not black. These are the people that Arthur Schlesinger can't deal with. These are the people that Diane Ravitch has a problem with. And not only is the brother in beauty in his front view, when you take his profile, there he is again. Amenemhotep III. If white folks can't call these Africans, then who are African? Look at that hair. You don't lock up no white hair like that. That's African hair. Amenemhotep III. That's why we have to have the images. And if you want to know whether Kemet was black, it's not a question of a color code. The Africans in Kemet were all colors, just like we are. But the difference that you distinguish Kemet from is the value system. The value system of the northern cradle is a value system centered around the male principle of dominance and warriorship. The value system of the southern cradle is centered around the duality of the male and the female principle, and the centrality of the female principle, because it is that female principle that brings forth life. So only Africans have been the people who had on their thrones with equal majesty with the men the female principle of rulership. Only Africans have had with their priestesses who represent the spiritual power. Only Africans have this duality of the male and the female principle and the centrality of the female principle. That's why we know the Arabs could not have built Kemetic civilization. That's why we know the Greeks could not have built it. That's why we know that the Europeans could not have built it. On the throne of Egypt at one great moment was Nefertari Amos, this beautiful black queen. 1550 BC, when no European is doing anything significant. Here is what is on the throne of Egypt. And that's why I say we've got to master our understanding. But she also represents another dynasty, the New Kingdom, because the Hysox had invaded the Nile Valley, brought in a foreign value system, created disruption, and then up from the south comes another black dynasty to reunite the power and reunite Kemet, which is our charge. We have to come up again and reunite. And this last image I'm going to leave you is a great family, and you've got to have this image and understand that they've kept it from you. Most of us know about the boy king Tutankhamun, but we only learn about him as an individual. We do not see him with his family context. We do not learn that King Tutankhamun married the daughter of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, Ankhesemen. So we do not see the second generation in relationship to Tutankhamun. But most of you have been wearing Nefertiti earrings and Nefertiti bracelets and don't realize that Nefertiti was a foreigner. She was brought in from Mitanni in Western Asia to join the royal family of Africans. And who was the person who brought her in? It was the great Queen T, to marry her husband as a diplomatic marriage, Amenhotep III. But unfortunately, the old man died. So Queen T said, young lady, we can't leave you here without a husband. We're going to hook you up with my son, Akhenaten, who became the pharaoh. So when you see King Tut, you need to see Nefertiti. When you see Nefertiti, you need to see Akhenaten, the pharaoh who is attributed to having raised anew the concept of the oneness of God. Read Moses and monotheism by Freud. How come we only see her standing by herself? How come we only see him standing by himself? How come we don't see this great individual, one of the great first revolutionaries in the history of the world? The reason is because they are too obviously African. You have to go to the female principle to see the true nature of things. If you want to understand who and what King Tut was, then you have to see his mother or his grandmother, Queen T. This is one of the greatest women in the history of the world. And you do not see her in a context with her great husband who helped build the Great Lodge of Luxor. You do not see her in a context with her great son who helped produce the Armana Revolution. You do not see her in a great context of her grandson or younger son, King Tut. You do not see her next to her daughter-in-law, Nefertiti. Because if you did, you'd be able to put together the keys of Kemetic greatness centered around the female principle. That's why we got work to do, brothers and sisters, but we can do it because Frederick Douglass left us with these words: if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess the favor of freedom yet deprecate agitation are men who want the crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power conceives nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue until they are resisted with either words or blows or both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Rise up, African peoples, your time is here.